Implementation Plan Part 1, The Philosopher. When I was reading these articles, it's a lot of ideas that I live by, and I've had a very unconventional path to becoming a teacher. And so, thinking about a lot of these concepts, like teachers being master learners, is something I can definitely relate to, as well as the notion of problem finding being just as important, if not more important, than problem solving. Um, so just a lot of this stuff spoke to me. Without going too long into my personal background story, I actually studied art in college, and I have an art degree, but I teach physics and I also teach robotics. So I had a lot of learning to do when I decided to go into education. And I've always been very passionate about science. When I was in high school, those are always my favorite classes. And I also have had a passion for engineering for a long time, even though I didn't end up taking that path in college. The idea of building stuff and robots and using tools and technology is always something that I've been fascinated by. So long story short, I had an opportunity to teach a robotics class about 5 years ago as a long-term sub, and I was also teaching physics at the same time. Luckily, I come from a pretty solid educational background, you could say. When I was in high school, I was good at physics, and most of that stuck with me. So picking that up to teach ninth grade physics was relatively simple. I mean, it was a lot of learning, but the thing that was really difficult was getting my actual credential, bypassing the CSET for physics. That was extremely difficult. I studied for a couple of years on my own independently to learn that content and be able to pass that test so that I would actually be fully credentialed to teach physics. So I can relate to the idea of a teacher as a learner. I've been continuing to learn physics the entire time that I've been in the classroom. And every time I learn a new experiment or a new concept or a new activity that I didn't really know about, it really blows my mind. I get really excited about it. And I love to show kids. And I will go out of my way, spend my own money if needed, go into school on the weekend, build some kind of contraption, whatever it is, to show this really cool principle, and I love doing that, and that's been a huge passion of mine as I've become more and more confident teaching physics. And like one of the articles said, yeah, you want to know that your daughter's teacher has some science background, and that's true, and I feel like I do, and I continue to get better at it, but I do feel like as a very self-directed learner who has had to kind of come up and learn a lot of these concepts on my own, I relate to kids not knowing, and I feel like I have the ability to kind of get on their level and think like a learner as opposed to just sort of sage on the stage master physicist. And so that's something I definitely can relate to. Now, for the robotics class, that's something that myself and a few other teachers in our charter, we have developed this curriculum over the years, and we really hang our hats up on this idea of growth mindset, learning through failures, reiteration, the engineering process, intrinsic motivation, and so on. And it's a very different class. The first semester is very kind of straightforward for the most part, teaching students the basics of programming and building, and teaching them specific tools that come into play during the second semester. The second semester is a much more open-ended semester. Students are assigned a project. There is a competition at the end of the year, which is actually coming up in about a week and a half. Getting ready for that competition. It's our fourth year now. And essentially students compete against each other in a game. This year's game is called Robo Pong. Robots essentially are in an arena. They're trying to collect ping pong balls and score on their opponent in a few different ways. An easier way to score would be to just dump balls off to the other side, but students can go above and beyond and figure out ways to shoot the balls into a goal. And that's pretty challenging. And there's really no right or wrong answer. Every robot is different, and so students can really sink their teeth into a long project that can be frustrating, extremely rewarding, incredibly difficult, but extremely fun at the same time. And that class is just a pride and joy of mine. I spend a lot of time developing that curriculum, and every year it's just grown more and more, and it continues to grow in outrageous ways that I can't really get into in the scope of this video, but I'll just let you know that that class is a real pride of mine. And so getting back to the question of what does a regular classroom look like? I've struggled with that because I have this robotics class and then I have this physics class, and the two used to be very different. And as the last few years have gone on, I find my physics class becoming more and more like my robotics class. And that's actually became sort of a mantra of mine for last school year. I realized that I have all these tools in my classroom. I have freshmen, and they can be a handful, but they have the skill set to use tools to build projects. And so for last year, I really focused on, my mantra was make physics feel like robotics. Make physics feel more like robotics. And I would just kind of keep that in mind throughout the year. And it was really kind of, last school year was a real crash course in doing projects and just getting the freshmen up out of their seat, doing new things, trying new things, taking risks. And a lot of those risks paid off. Not every time. I mean, I'll be the first to admit there were some projects where I don't think we really maybe achieved the goal that I had in mind, but I can accept that. And would consider myself a pretty reflective person, and every time that a project flopped a little bit, I would adjust and think about how to make it better. Kind of as the year went on, I found those engineering projects, as I called them, becoming stronger and stronger, to a point where I even really kind of started moving students along in the curriculum at different paces. So what I found myself doing is I would take a whole bunch of worksheets that would usually take 2-3 weeks to go through, and I would make it into a packet. And students who want to move quickly and that wanted to do a more ambitious project at the end of the unit had the option of working through those worksheets as quickly as they would like. And a lot of these kids knocked out those worksheets within a week. And so they had essentially gone through most of the unit that would take, like, let's say a month. They had gone through it in maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. Where other students didn't want to move that quickly, or they didn't have the skills to, and what that allowed me to do is focus more on those students who needed the help. In the meantime, the fast-paced students were able to pick a project of their choosing, as long as I approved of it, and then they had a couple weeks of class time to build their culminating project, while I was working with the other students who needed more support, and everyone seemed happy, and the projects were really, really cool. And to me, that was kind of the moment where I feel like taking those risks really paid off. I had some amazing projects, like students built a mini Tesla coil just out of stuff they found lying around in my classroom, and it worked. It was really cool. Some other students built a potato cannon on their own, and that was incredible. We launched it at the school. It was unbelievable. Everyone was freaking out, and it was these 4 freshmen who built it, and it was just amazing. So that was a really awesome moment for me last year. And I think ever since then, I've embraced that feeling. And reading about the flipped classroom and getting a better perspective of what that means, I started to realize that I was kind of really, that's what I was doing. I was starting to move towards this kind of flipped, blended, mastery-based classroom. And I didn't even really completely realize that's what I was doing until now, actually. And so I think my biggest barrier that this class has really helped me out with, I feel really happy to start using these tools. But for me, this barrier that I had, and it might sound silly, but I've never really been a very organized person, and so when it comes to like Google technology, Google Classroom, and those things, I've tended to bank on the students' ability to use these technologies, and me being kind of an old fart, I just have sort of said, hey, they know how to do it, they'll collaborate, and it works. They get things done, but there's so many opportunities to build organization and community and create a video library of screencasts and collaborate with students, have more of a hand in what they're doing and be able to monitor their progress through these Web 2.0 tools. And so I just think in the past I didn't know how to go about really doing that, and I feel like I'm starting to really get the hang of it now. Sorry, my cat is scratching the door. Jimmy, stop. I'm gonna open the door. Okay. I feel like I still have a lot to learn, but I see what's possible with these tools, and I see what I've been missing out on, and I know what's possible when it comes to differentiating learning and moving students at different paces and allowing students to explore their own passions. I know it can happen with that, and I've seen it firsthand. I've also seen it with my robotics classes. And I feel like now this is it. This technology piece, the Web 2.0 tools, this is it. This is the ingredient that's going to push me ahead. And this year I really worked on doing projects like last year and really trying to make the class feel more in that way. But I've also focused on really kind of tightening up those procedures so that it's a little more deliberate. And I think it's been a good year in that sense. But I think I'm now at the point where I know how to organize it. I know how to keep students kind of like on track and focused, and to help them get the most out of an experience. But with this technology, now I'm going to be able to really keep track of things so much better, monitor student progress, assess students through the technology, and it would make grading a lot easier. And I find myself still having to repeat stuff all the time because I have that technological old fart block that won't let me just push ahead a little bit and take things from that new angle. So now I know what I need to do. I'm going to spend the summer drinking the Google Kool-Aid and building frameworks for my classroom that will allow students to monitor their learning goals. It will allow faster-paced students to do more supplemental projects and experiments, and it will give me time to also focus on students that just need that extra one-on-one attention. So yeah, I related a lot to these articles. Everything that was said I can pretty much relate to, as you can see, all my different stories. But that's where I see myself going. I'm going to dive in, drink the Google Kool-Aid, get this stuff up and running, and I'm really looking forward to implementing a lot of new techniques next year. All right, that was it. Part 1, The Philosopher.